Hey, that's another great progression. Um, short amp story. So we had rehearsal, and at church I just leave it there. This big uh, 2x12 cabinet that a friend of mine built me, and a small. I've had this thing for years. A little small micro dark orange head, and I was just having a heck of a time getting that thing loud enough. Believe it or not, I got some weird issue with preamps and soundboard to get that through a strong enough signal to get. And he get this a sound guy. To his credit, got it dialed in um, towards the end of practice. But I thought, we talked about the AC-15. He got pretty excited when I talked about the AC-15. I talked about some of the records he had recorded using an AC-15 and Reverend guitars. Another video about that out there somewhere. Um, and so I decided, you know what, I'm going to take this in. I'm just going to crank it. Um, and I like the tone that I like is this edge of breakup tone. It's kind of clean, but I can kind of dig in a little bit. But I went away from that when I play at church. Not because it doesn't fit. It certainly fits. Um, but sometimes if they turn the gain up at the board, then this goes from edge of breakup to completely overdriven, and I can't get any cleans out of it. Um, but I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna crank this thing, get a little bit of dirt in it, and I'm gonna use my EQ pedal to see. You can pull that right out. Like I pull the bass right out of that, maybe even more. So I'm gonna hold on. I gotta put it back. Play with that a little bit. Take this and kind of crank that and get a really cool sound. Another thing, I've been kind of somebody had a video about not using tabs, and I don't really use tabs to learn songs, but I do use like chord charts. Like I'll just Google like you know Freebird chords or something, and I'll go, oh, then it gives me the key and the chords, and I can fill in the other spot. But I thought, I want to be a little better at that. So I just loaded up Spotify, and I'm like, whatever I see on here, I'm just going to learn it by ear. And um, there was like a mix that put together of rock songs for me. The first one in there was Detroit Rock City, and I thought, oh, that's cool. I've never learned that song. I'm gonna learn that song. My first disclaimer is when I was a kid, I loved Kiss. Never been a huge Ace Frehley fan because he sucks. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He's not a great guitar player. Paul Stanley wrote all those guitar parts. He really did. So I'm working through these parts, um, and the is fine. I think it's not here. Whatever it is, that's fine. But the like interlude part, I think that one note is off. But that part, I was like working through that, and I'm like, it doesn't seem like something he would come up with. I feel like his stuff is way simpler than that. And I've seen videos where guys are like, oh man, I loved you growing up, and they name some song, and he's like, oh, what song is that? And he doesn't know how to play it, and they start playing it. He goes, oh yeah, and then the muscle memory comes back, and he plays some simple thing. So um, I was not surprised to learn that Bob Ezra, I think it's his name, was the producer. He wrote that part. He wrote it on a keyboard, um, note for note, and Ace copied him. Ace did not write that iconic guitar solo thing. The do 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 do. He didn't write that. Bob Ezra wrote that. And I knew it as I was figuring it out. And I'm like, it's got these jumps in. At any rate, I knew he didn't write that. Which kind of brings me to the thing I want to talk about today. So there's a lot of rules that you'll see on the internet regarding guitar players. You know, I talked about the triad one, and actually, this part, what I was playing earlier, perfect a situation where triads fit. So I'm doing this triad. At any rate, that's a different video. And there'll be lots of things that people tell you you should do, you shouldn't do, yada yada yada. Some people say don't play pentatonics. That's ridiculous. You can play pentatonics, mix it up, whatever. But the one rule that I read early on, not early on, but I read several years ago that has kind of stuck with me is never sacrifice rhythm for lead. And I'm a huge fan of that for a lot of reasons. Let me grab them. All right, so I never sacrifice rhythm for lead. I can play lead, and I enjoy playing lead, but depending on what I'm doing in a band situation, I always default personally to making sure that rhythm is there. Now, if that means I end up playing a bunch of rhythm, that's fine with me, because think about who you're playing for, right? You're playing for guitar players, they're going to want to hear wicked solos, right? But you're not, usually. You're playing for someone else. If you're playing at a church, you're playing for the congregation, you're playing at a club, you're playing for the people that came to see your band. If you're playing in a cover band, they want to hear what they're used to hearing on the radio or CDs or on Spotify or whatever, and that's not your solo. Or even though, unless they're like iconic, like the Freebird line, yeah, you play that one, right? You don't skip that one. But other like smaller lines that are like some spicy sauce on top, right? They're not really a core characteristic part of the song, but they're in there. And depending on what tools you're using, you may hear that and then want to play that line. But if you ditch rhythm and there's no foundation there, and you default to that line, it's going to sound bad, and it's not going to be recognizable to a non-musician, or even it might not even be recognizable to musicians, because you're serving yourself instead of the music or the audience or whatever. So lead lines without structure sound weak and thin. If there's nothing behind them, if there's another guitar player playing the rhythm, fine, definitely play all those cool lines. But if there's not, and you ditch on those to play the lead lines instead, it's going to sound, dare I say, like trash. It's not going to sound good at all. And the thing is, I know this for a fact, but I get different responses when I say it to people, that all those lead lines, all that melody, they come from the chords anyway. Those are coming right out of the chords. I guarantee you they're not playing melody notes that are not harmonic with the chord that's being played. So you can play the line and the chord at the same time. This is why playing the changes in jazz, blues, any other genre of music is really popular. Let me show you what I mean. So the song I was playing earlier, the melody is... that's what one guitar is doing, right? And the other guitar is doing to the 4, 5, to the 4, back to the 1. That's what you can do. This triad. You've combined rhythm and lead together. You still have your lead line that's recognizable that people want to hear, but you still have that chord structure underneath it that's big and fills up a lot of space. That makes it full. If you don't have somebody else playing that, if you have somebody else playing that, that's fine. Sometimes keys are enough, sometimes they're not, depending on the voicings that they're using, like where they're at on the keyboard. So the way to do that is just find that melody, and then so that's the 1. That's 1 sus. 1 again. That's a 4, has a 1 in it, and then that's a 7. You just find the chords that have those melody notes in them. They're probably the chords in the song anyway, and then you find how you can reach those melodies. Those melody notes inside those chords. That's one way to make sure that you're not sacrificing. That's a really good example of not sacrificing rhythm for lead. You're playing lead, but you're also playing rhythm. You're serving kind of both parts of that song. All right. So here's the thing for me. When I was a wee lad, shredders were very popular. Yngwie, George Lynch, Eddie Van Halen, a lot of them. With the exception of Yngwie Malmsteen, no, even Yngwie, they all had an element of rhythm to their playing. So Yngwie's playing arpeggios up and down the neck. He's just playing them really fast, and they're following the chord changes. George Lynch, not as rhythmic, more of a shredder, but he would have rhythmic parts to it. Eddie Van Halen's rhythm is off the charts. So just playing a flurry of notes because you can play really fast, it's not music, and it's not pleasant. The only person that impresses is another guitar player that goes, wow, that guy can play really fast. Nobody else cares. They want to hear songs. They want to hear some sort of musical structure that flows together and makes them feel something. A bunch of notes together isn't really that. Now, some people may enjoy that, and that's fine. In my opinion, that's not something that I want to listen to. It's just a bunch of notes. And really, I mean, even back in the day when I was into shredders, I was into the ones that had some sort of harmony and melody to what they were doing. Like it was iconic. Like some of those Eddie Van Halen solos are iconic, and you can sing them. That's the part, to be able to sing them. Okay, so I talked a bit about an approach to melody and chords at the same time. I want to talk a bit about how I learn songs. And I talked a bit, in this video, in the beginning of this video, how I would look up chord charts. So I always try to like find the key, to find something that works. You're like, oh, so it's in the key of C. You may not know if it's minor or major yet, but you know that's your tonal center. And then I work out the chords of the song. I'm like, okay, I know the chords for the intro and the verse, chorus if there's any bridge, pre-chorus, whatever. And then I work on the melody, because I want to be able to play the melody. I want to be able to play the melody and the rhythm at the same time. Now somebody else may be playing that rhythm, that's fine, and and I can ditch that, but I should know so that I'm prepared to play whatever. And I play by myself a fair amount, so a lot of that is just me playing and finding ways to do both so that they sound like the song and they sound good and musical. So that's it. That's just my soapbox of why I don't think you should ever sacrifice rhythm for lead. Um, Lead should always be secondary. That's it. Enjoy the rest of your night. See ya.